video, we're going to talk about converting data, particularly accounts receivable data, into a table format that can be put into our borrowing base certificate and automatically update the certificate itself. So the format that we want to have this accounts receivable data structured in is to have the customer number, the customer name, and the respective balances of 30, 60, 90-day aging. And we have extracted data out of an accounting system. It was exported in PDF format, and we imported that data into Excel. And this is what it looks like. And as you can see, it's really not the cleanest data. So as you look at this data, you can see that we have a customer number here. We have the customer name here. And then we have the respective balances out in these columns. So it doesn't really line up, and to move this around individually by each account can be very time consuming. So I'm going to show you one of the ways that we approach this to try to make this a lot easier and simpler to do. And the technique that we use really focuses around using autofilter to delete unnecessary lines. So let's begin the process, and I'm going to begin by turning on autofilter. So what I want to do here is I want to highlight the range that of all the data, and I'm just paging down to get to all the data, and I'm going to highlight everything, and I'm going to turn on autofilter. That allows me to capture what I need for data and categorize it. So now as I look at the data, if I look at column J, I can see that there really isn't any useful information in column J. So what I'm going to do first of all is I am going to delete this column because it's just not needed. The next thing I want to do is I want to delete unnecessary lines. Well, if I look at my totals, and I'm going to shade my bar here so where my filters are, so I can know exactly where they are. Now what I want to do is I want to look at all unnecessary lines. So if I look at this first column, I really want to eliminate all numeric data from the data that I want to delete. So if I look at this, I can say, all right, these are my totals that I want to keep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the drop down list, and I'm going to unselect the totals. That will take all the numeric data out. The next thing I want to do is I want to keep the customer name, and I'm scanning through the data to make sure it's all lined up, and it appears that the names and the customer numbers are all in the same column. You can see I have extra data here of phone numbers or accounts payable contact information, but basically my customer names and customer numbers are all in the same columns. So what I'm going to do is I want to come back up to the top here, and I'm going to deselect the names. Now if I look through the data, you see I don't have my customer names, and I don't have my customer aging data in here. These are all essentially unnecessary lines of data that are just not needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to start by selecting the first row under my heading, and I'm going to page down and select all the data except for my grand totals, and I will right click on the side here, and I will delete these lines. Now it won't delete the lines in between, it will only delete the visible lines. So I'm going to delete these rows, and as I turn back on the filters to show all available data, now I have my customer number, customer name, and data very close together. I'll readjust the size of these columns so everything is easily more visible, and turn on filtering the format of the numbers. Now what I have is I have some unnecessary data here, and I also have a mismatch in the line. So first what I want to do is I'm going to take off the names again, and I want to see that I have a lot of data here about credit limits and AP contact, and I'm just going to highlight these cells, and I want to press delete to clear the contents. I'll turn the filtering back on, and now I have just the data that I want. It's just not lined up the way I want. So what I want to do is I want to use this first line here, and I'm going to select, I'm just going to press the equal sign to select the customer number, and then I want to press the equal sign again and select the customer name. Now I have, by use of formula, I have my customer number and my customer name on the line with my totals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, deselect the customer name, and you can see that I have just the total lines, with the first one indicating that I do have my customer number and customer name on that line, but it's done through formulas. So I want to copy these formulas down all the way down to the end, and you can see that I now, because it's uniform as far as the spacing, the customer numbers and customer names now fall in line. Problem with this data is if I decide that I want to just take the names and delete them, my formulas will get messed up. So what I'm going to do first is I want to convert the formulas. I want to highlight the whole area, and I am going to copy, and then I'm going to paste as values. And by doing that, I've now taken what once was a formula, and now it's turned into actual text. Now when I select just the names, there is no other data other than the customer names. I can highlight these rows, and I can right click and delete the rows. Now if I turn my filter back on, I have my data in the format that I want. It's now in a table format. I have my customer number, customer name, and then I have my appropriate aging data. All I have to do now, and I do this in sections so it lines up, I will highlight my customer number and customer name, come over to my accounts receivable data, and paste it in here as values. I will then take my numeric data from the aging, because these columns will line up. I will highlight the data section, press Control C to copy, move over to accounts receivable data, and paste as values, so that way formatting looks even. And what I've done in this file has automatic totals at the bottom that summarize the data, and as you can see, $541,000 is the same as the $541,000 here in this aging for the totals. So that's how we convert the data into accounts receivable, so the borrowing base certificate can then do its job in completing the certificate based on the requirements.